What can you say about Scooby-Doo, Where Are You that hasn't been said already? Well, how about that the history of the show and what inspired it is just as entertaining as the show itself? After all ideas come from somewhere. It's weird to think about it now, but when it first debuted in 1969, Scooby-Doo was a game changer in Saturday morning cartoons, in the sense that its formula was a new twist on old cliches, along with characters that felt fresh and original, but also felt pretty familiar. And that's what we're looking at today. What were the shows and movies that inspired this silly cartoon about 4 teens and a talking dog? So let's not waste any time, let's get started. You probably already know this, but Scooby-Doo was the result of pleasing parent watch groups who were up in arms over the amount of violence in Saturday morning cartoons, mostly from Hanna-Barbera's action shows. Not even broadcasts of theatrical shorts were safe. All the Hanna-Barbera action shows on CBS were canceled by the late 60s. On top of that, rival ABC would debut the Beatles cartoon, which clobbered CBS in the ratings. This put CBS president, the late Fred Silverman, in a tight spot, and he was in dire need of a hit. But with the exception of HB's own Wacky Races, nothing really came close until 1968's The Archie Show from Filmation, and based on the Archie comic series. The show featured the Archie gang as a band as they navigate their way through high school and being teenagers. It was a big hit with kids and tweens, especially with the bubblegum pop music. And at the time, it was the most successful Saturday morning cartoon. Wanting to capitalize on the success, Fred Silverman contacted William Hanna and Joseph Barbera of Hanna-Barbera fame with a proposal to create something similar, except this new show would be a mix of The Archie Show and those old radio mystery dramas. HP editors turned writers, Joe Ruby and Ken Spears, came up with a treatment titled Mysteries 5. The show featured 5 teens as a rock band, while solving spooky mysteries on the side involving ghosts and monsters. But the Mysteries 5 would also have to deal with high school, relationships, etc. Another character was added to the band as the group's guest star, a bongo-playing dog named Too Much. Yes, for those who don't know, Too Much was a popular slang term at the time. Certain elements of the pitch would drop. There was too much going on. It's funny because one of the later incarnations, Mystery Incorporated, would actually work in high school, along with parent and relationship drama, which according to co-creator Tony Savoni, impressed Joe and Ken.
So we do talk to, we talk to Ken and Joe. We talk to the guys who created this show.
And actually when we talked to them, we showed them some of this stuff, they said, wow, you know what, some of these ideas that you're touching on here are things that we wanted to do in the original 1969 show, and they just weren't able to do it at that point. And it felt good to hear that, and we felt we were on the
we felt like we weren't completely crazy. So
while presenting the concept art to the executives, there were concerns that the show would be too scary for kids. Coincidentally enough, the title of the show at this time was changed from Mysteries 5 to Whose Sisters Are Scared. So the retooled show now emphasized more on the dog and the humor to lighten the tone. Of course, the whole haunted house, spooky night, and wacky hijinks isn't exactly new, as it was a staple of comedies and cartoon shorts for many years. The core premise may also have been inspired by the children's novel series, The Famous Five, where a group of 5 young children and their dogs stumble upon adventures involving treasure and criminals. Even Silverman admitted that the Abbott and Costello Meet movies was an influence on Scooby-Doo.
Going back to the days when, as a kid, I would go and look at Abbott and Costello, Meet Frankenstein, and movies like that. I figured there was a great opportunity to do that, played for laughs in animation. Our Abbott and Costello will be Scooby-Doo and Shaggy. And went there, and in a matter of 2 hours, we had revised the concept, and it worked. It just worked great.
Before we continue, if you like this or any of my other videos, I would ask you to consider supporting me on Patreon, where every dollar goes to production like software expenses and getting these out on a regular basis. You could get early access, a special credit, shout out to a YouTube, Twitch, or blog. a commission by me, you could even request a Hanna-Barbera or Tom and Jerry special for the Funtastic Legacy of Hanna-Barbera minisodes, which could be anything from this list. If you don't want to, you could also donate to me on Ko-fi. And liking, commenting, subscribing, sharing, and clicking the bell icon is much appreciated. Thank you all so much for your support. And now, back to the video. The Mystery Inc. gang went through many changes in design, with the 5 teens reduced to 4, and Scooby, who was originally a sheepdog, being changed to a Great Dane, likely to avoid comparisons to Archie's hot dog. The human members of the gang were also given new names. Kelly Summers was now Daphne Blake, Linda and WW were no longer brother and sister, and became Velma and Shaggy respectively. Jeff and Mike were merged into one character named Ronnie, and was later renamed Fred. I wonder why. Like many Hanna-Barbera shows, the characters were modeled after popular celebrities and TV shows at the time. The teens of Mystery Inc. were inspired by the cast of the 60s sitcom The Many Loves of Dobie Gillis. Dobie Gillis centered on a teen named Dobie who was interested in gaining popularity, money, fame, and hot chicks. It's definitely a time capsule of 60s youth culture, especially with the character Maynard G. Krebs, played by Bob Denver, one of the first representations of the beatnik counterculture on television, and who resembles a certain dog food eating hippie we all know and love. In the second episode, Hassle in the Castle, Shaggy even does a variation of Maynard's "You rang" catchphrase.
You rang, you buzzed?
The personalities of the rest of the kids were far removed from their Dobie Gillis counterparts. Fred was nothing like the lovesick Dobie, Daphne wasn't a gold-digging schemer like Thalia, and Velma wasn't like the Dobie-crazy Zelda. There were discussions of what kind of dog, later renamed Scooby-Doo, would be, a small feisty dog or a big cowardly dog. The latter was chosen due to having more of a character to play with. Joe and Ken envisioned Scooby-Doo to be a cowardly hero, who, where there was danger, as scared as he was, he always came through, similar to Bob Hope comedies. Speaking of which, the 1940 film Ghostbreakers, that's another film that features many hallmarks that Scooby-Doo will be known for. Haunted houses, ghosts, zombies, a mystery that needs to be solved. I wouldn't be surprised if Joe and Ken drew inspiration from that movie as well. Some of the monsters in Where Are You, notably in the episode A Gaggle of Galloping Ghosts, also seem to be homages to the classic Universal monsters. Music played a big part of Scooby-Doo's identity. In Where Are You, the show's music director was Hanna-Barbera's then recent composer, Ted Nichols, who started with the studio in the mid to late 60s, mostly on HB's action shows. His score is the right balance between spooky, adventurous, and playful. Many cues were recycled from previous HB projects Ted worked on, like Banana Splits, New Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, Johnny Quest, and A Man Called Flintstone. The second season featured the addition of chase songs, Archie show-like bubblegum pop tunes performed by singer Austin Roberts. These were reminiscent of musical romps from the Monkees TV show, where hijinks ensue as a monkey song played in the background during the show's chase scenes. I say this without a hint of irony, but these songs really are bangers. Yeah, they're cheesy and a product of the times, but they just put me in a good mood. All the songs will later be released on a compilation album, Scooby-Doo Snack Tracks, in 1998, which is now out of print. Ted Nichols' score will continue to be recycled in several Scooby series in the Hanna-Barbera era, even when HB's main music director, Hoyt Curtin, took over, and will reappear from time to time in commercials, specials, and remixed in 2 of Scooby-Doo direct-to-video movies from 2003. Scooby-Doo Where Are You premiered September 13th, 1969, and became a massive hit for Hanna-Barbera and CBS's Saturday morning lineup. Oddly enough, it debuted at the same time as another mystery-solving show, Filmation's The Hardy Boys, which is based on an established book series. There was concern that the Hardy Boys would overshadow Hanna-Barbera's newest star, and, you probably don't need to be told this, Scooby-Doo won out in the end. Scooby-Doo became so popular it became influential itself. There's a saying in Hollywood that goes, if it's successful, do it again. And Hanna-Barbera did just that in the 70s, with most of the Saturday morning lineup on the big 3 networks filled with Scooby-Doo clones. Shows about teenagers solving crimes with the help of a wacky animal, car, or ghost. Hey, let's do Scooby-Doo but with a talking shark. Or hey, let's do Scooby-Doo but with 2 cowardly dogs. Or hey, let's do Scooby-Doo but the dog wears a hat. And the Partridge Family are there for some reason. Yeah, I gotta get to that Danny Bonaducci crowd. Some would even go as far as to use the same voice actors and music cues. Some variations of the concept were inventive. Josie and the Pussycats borrowed from Scooby-Doo, but it did stand out enough to be its own thing. And when Joe Ruby and Ken Spears went to start their own studio, Ruby Spears, their first cartoon was a Scooby-Doo clone, but with a twist, one of the teens turned into a werewolf in each episode. There were so many of these Scooby clones, I remember Cartoon Network had a block of them called Mysteries Inc., and Boomerang had a similar one called Those Meddling Kids. Many follow-up Scooby series in the 70s and 80s would capitalize on popular trends at the time. For example, Scrappy-Doo came at a time where several cartoon characters were given cute kid sidekicks, while 13 Ghosts of Scooby-Doo was released at the height of the popularity of Ghostbusters. Pup Named Scooby-Doo followed the babyfication trend, which was started by Muppet Babies, but took an influence of the Ralph Bakshi Mighty Mouse in terms of wacky humor. After a brief hiatus in the early 90s, the franchise would find a new life and reruns on Cartoon Network. And after Time Warner acquired the Turner/Hanna-Barbera properties, Warner Brothers Animation would eventually take over the franchise, releasing tons of straight-to-DVD films since 2003, new shows, theatrical and TV movies, and several waiting apologies. For a cartoon that's as iconic as Scooby-Doo, it's really interesting to look at what inspired it, as well as how it changed everything in terms of kids' TV. Is it formulaic? Yes. Can they be corny at times? Yes. But these characters are still so lovable, and the horror comedy aspect has stood the test of time. And like I said before, it will never get old to me. I'm glad the show has continued to stick around after all these years, and keep entertaining fans, young and old. Until next time, I'm 47 Cartoon Guy, and I gotta fly.
Scooby-Dooby-Doo?